Okay, let's take a look at section 3 of test 10. Number 1, what value of z satisfies the equation above? So they're asking us to solve for one variable. This is early in the section. It's going to be pretty straightforward. So what we're going to do is subtract z from both sides. We get z plus 1 equals 0. Now we are going to subtract 1 from both sides. We get z equals negative 1. Number 2, this is a word problem, and I see something that looks like linear equations in the answers. So I'm going to be ready for a linear equation word problem. We have a price of $300, an initial payment of $60. Okay, initial values, those are usually y-intercepts. And then we have weekly payments of $30. So recurring payments, those are typically rates, slopes. So it looks like we have a y-intercept of 60 and a slope of 30. Which of the following equations can be used to find the number of weekly payments, W, required to complete the purchase, assuming there are no taxes or fees? Okay, so let's write the general form of a linear equation. We've got that here, and now we just need to plug in our values. The total price, 300. Our slope is 30. Our y-intercept is 60. And they wanted this in terms of W here. So we can see that our answer is C. Number 3. First thing I see, this table here, this sure looks like a set of X and Y values. The table above shows shipping charges for an online retailer selling sporting goods. There's a linear relationship, okay, between the shipping charge and the weight of the merchandise. Which function can be used to determine the total shipping charge, f of x, in dollars for an order with a merchandise weight of X pounds? Okay, so this is a linear equation, and we are supposed to figure this out. The first thing I would say is, can I find a y-intercept on here? I don't see one, but I do see a possibility of getting one. If we notice here, we're going from 10 to 5. If we go minus 5 again, we could get to 0. So let's see, we can follow this linear pattern to figure out what our y-intercept is. I'm going to round this to 22. I'm going to round this to 17. It doesn't need to be perfect here because we're just trying to get an estimate of what that y-intercept would be. So if we go down 5 units on x, we go down 5 units on y, then that would take us to 12 as so our y-intercept is 0, 12, approximately. If we look here, we're actually done with this problem because only B has that y-intercept. Now, let's prove that we have the right slope as well, just to make sure that our equation is correct. So we're going to do y minus y over x minus x. And so we will do 22 minus 17 over 10 minus 5, and we get 5 over 5, which gives us a slope of approximately 1, and so B is still the correct answer. Number 4, we have another linear equation here, and it represents the relationship between height, h of x. Now, when they tell us what certain variables are standing for, it's important to try and match them to the graph to help you understand what's going on. So I'm going to put here that this is height. And the base diameter x, okay, that is our x-axis. So I'm going to put diameter. Or let's just put base diameter. How much greater, okay, so it looks like there's going to be some sort of subtraction here, is the height of a Doric column, so they want height, that has a base diameter of 5 feet, than the height of a Doric column that has a base diameter of 2 feet. So they gave us two x values here, base diameter of 5 and base diameter of 2, and they're asking for a difference in height. So they're asking for a change in y. So our base diameter of 5 feet has a height of 35, and our base diameter of 2 feet has a height of 14. So the difference between them is 21 feet. Number 5. If x is greater than 0, okay, this is their way of saying x is positive. Which of the following is equivalent to the given expression? So here we're just trying to simplify this. So we have square root of 9 times square root of x squared. Square root of 9 is 3. Square root of x squared is x. So we are just looking for 3x. Number 6. First thing I see when I look at this is we've got difference of squares. It's really important to see that on the SAT. It's going to help us solve this. The second thing I see is x minus 1 is in the denominator, which means x cannot be 1, because then we're dividing by 0, and that's undefined. So first we can cross out c. Now let's get to work. We have x minus 1 times x plus 1 from the difference of squares over x minus 1 equals negative 2. We can cancel out the x minus 1 factors, and then we have x plus 1 equals negative 2. Subtract 1 from both sides, and we get x equals negative 3. Number 7. We've got another graph. First thing I look for, intercepts. I can't really tell what the x-intercept is, but I can see that the y-intercept here is 0, 4. The graph of y equals f of x is shown for the xy plane. What is the value of f of 0? What does this mean? This means when x equals 0, they want the y value. Well, when x equals 0, that's a y-intercept. So that's just this value right there. It's really important to notice intercepts, x and y-intercepts. So since this is just the function notation way of asking for a y-intercept. So the answer is 4. Number 8. In the figure above, point B lies on line segment AD. What is the value of 3x? So we want to make sure we don't just solve for x, think we're done, and then get this wrong. We need 3x. Okay, the first thing I see is that this is 90, this 90-degree angle here, and then a complete semicircle is 180 degrees, which means what's left here, these guys all add up to 90 degrees, and that's 5x, x plus 2x plus 2x. Let's solve here. 90 divided by 5 is 18. But we want 3x, not 1x, so we're going to multiply everything by 3. And so 18 times 3 is 54. And so that is our answer. Number 9, again, another line. We're looking at intercepts here. So our x-intercept is negative 4, 0. And our y-intercept here is 0, negative 4. And we want to notice our slope is negative. So I'm going to put slope this. And let's see what we got. We need the equation of the line. Okay. So this is the slope-intercept form of a line. Let's fill that in here and then see if we can match it to one of the answer choices. Okay, first we know the y-intercept is negative 4. Great. Let's figure out the slope. Now, since we have a graph here, we can actually just count it off. Down 1 over 1. So the slope is negative 1. Which means we have y equals negative x minus 4. Now, that doesn't quite look like anything here, so how can we figure out how to match it up? X and y are on the same side of the equation, and the constant is on the other side. So let's just add x to move it over here. And we get x plus y equals negative 4. And so our answer is C. Number 10, again, paying attention to y-intercepts, we can see that 0, k is a y-intercept. We don't know what k is yet, but they marked it there, so it must be important. The graph of y equals 2x squared plus 10x plus 12 is shown. If the graph crosses the y-axis at the point 0k, okay, this is a y-intercept. What is the value of k? Well, if we can read the y-intercept off this, we're done. And the constant is the y-intercept. So our answer is D. Number 11. A circle in the xy plane has a center of 5, 7 and a radius of 2. Which of the following is the equation of the circle? Well, let's write the general form of a circle and then match things as they go. Okay, so this is the x-coordinate of the center, which goes in for h. This is the y-coordinate of the center, which goes in for k. And this is the radius, which goes in for r. So we have x minus 5 squared plus y minus 7 squared equals 2 squared, which is 4. And so now we're looking for which one matches that. And we have A. Number 12, I see two triangles here of different sizes. That means there's probably some sort of similarity relationship between the two triangles, and there might even be some sort of trig ratio involved. There will be a proportion of some kind. It might be trig, it might not be. So let's see what we have. In the figure above, triangle ABC is similar to triangle DEF. Okay, so let's make sure that we get the corresponding angles understood here. A corresponds to D, B corresponds to E, and C corresponds to F. What is the value of cosine of E? Well, let's think about that. Okay, here's our reference angle, and SOHCAHTOA tells us that cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, which means we want, here's our adjacent side and here's our hypotenuse side. Since these triangles are similar, their trig proportions will be, or their trig ratios will be the same. They'll be proportional, which means 12 over 13 is the sine of this, is the cosine of this angle, and 12 over 13 is also the cosine of this angle. Number 13, in the xy plane, the graph of the function f of x equals x squared plus 5x plus 4 has two x-intercepts. What is the distance between the x-intercepts? So right now we have a quadratic in standard form, and when they ask for x-intercepts, what they want is factored form. And so if we factor this, we can get the rest of the way to the question. So we look for what multiplies to 4 and adds up to 5, and that's going to be 4 and 1. And so our x-intercepts are -4 and -1, and they want the distance between them. So let's do -4 minus -1. Notice it's really important to distribute your negative here, so we have -4 plus 1. And so we're going to get -3. Now, we want the distance, so the distance is an absolute value. And so our answer is going to be 3. Number 14. What are all values of x that satisfy the given equation? Now, when they give you these Roman numerals, it's actually nice when they only give you 2 of them because you can check those very quickly. If they gave you 3 or 4, it might be hard to check them and you might have to solve another way. In this case, we have 2 easy numbers to check, so we're just going to plug them in and see which ones are true. So let's plug in 1 here, and we get square root of 4 equals 1 minus 3, which means 2 equals -2. That's not right. And then we plug in 9 here, so we get the square root of 36 equals 9 minus 3, which means we get 6 equals 6. That does work. And so B is our answer. Number 15, we've got a system of equations. Yeah, we have 2 equations here, and that's what it says here. For which of the following values of A does the system have no solution? So what does it mean when we have a system of equations with no solution? It means we have parallel lines. It's really important to notice that right away, which means their slopes are going to be the same. Now the long way to do this is to set them both into slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, and then compare the slopes and figure out what A needs to be to make that work. However, we can go faster than that if we realize that the coefficients in front of x and y need to follow the same ratio in order for them to have the lines to have the same slope at the end. So let's just try to make these lines match each other. So we've got ax plus 2y equals 4. I look here, and I realize if I multiply everything by 2 here, I can get the y's to match up. So I will have negative 6x plus 2y equals 12. Now I don't care about the constants because for the slope to be the same, all we care about are the coefficients of x and y. Since our y coefficients match, we can say a equals negative 6, and that's our answer. Again, no solution means you have parallel lines with the same slope, and instead of setting everything into y equals mx plus b, you can just realize you need your coefficients in front of x and y to match. Okay, number 16. We've got t, c, and f here in this equation as variables, so we want to pay attention to what those are for. A manufacturer shipped units of a certain product to 2 locations. The equation shows the total shipping cost T in dollars. Okay, so that's total cost for shipping C units to the closer location. Okay, so C means closer. And F units to the farther location. Okay, that means F means farther. If the total shipping cost was $47,000, oh, that's going to go in for T. And 3,000 units were shipped to the farther location, oh, that's going to go in for F, which means they're probably going to ask us to solve for C. Yes, they did. Okay, so let's plug that in. 47,000 equals 5C plus 12 times 3,000. Again, all we're doing is just, they said C is closer, F is farther, and T is total cost, so we're plugging in what they told us to. Okay, 12 times 3,000 is 36,000. And then we're going to subtract 36,000 from both sides. And so we're left with 11,000 equals 5C. Now we need to divide 11,000 by 5. And the easiest way to do this with no calculator is to split it up. 10,000 divided by 5 is 2,000. And 1,000 divided by 5 is 200. So our answer is 2,200. We just add them back up. Number 17. We've got absolute value here. Sometimes that's scary. It's generally not too difficult though if you know what to do. A and B are the solutions. Okay, so we're going to solve for x. What is the value of the absolute value of a minus b? Well, let's get those solutions first. The way to do that with absolute value is to split it into 2x plus 1 equals 5, and then 2x plus 1 equals negative 5. Okay, so we subtract 1 from both sides, and then divide by 2, we get x equals 2. Subtract 1 from both sides, we get negative 6. Divide by 2, we get negative 3. So our two solutions are 2 and negative 3. So let's subtract them. Again, got to pay attention to distributing that negative, or else you're going to miss the answer here. So we get 2 plus 3 is 5. Absolute value of 5 is 5. Number 18. Juan purchased an antique that had a value of $200 at the time of purchase. Each year, the value of the antique is estimated to increase 10% over its value from the previous year. The estimated value of the antique 2 years after purchase can be represented by the expression 200A. Now here's something really important. Can be represented by the expression 200A. They are telling you equals 200A is part of this equation. So can be represented by the expression, can be represented by the model. Any of that language means write it down as equals whatever they just give you. What is the value of A? So we have to figure out the left side of the equation here. Increase 10%, that sounds like an exponential function. So we need to quickly go over what an exponential function has. We have initial value here. This is your increase. Let's just say growth rate because it could be negative. And then here we have the growth periods. So how many times it doubled or tripled, or how many times it went up by 5% or down by 10% or whatever. Okay, so let's fill in what we have. We have an initial value of 200. We have a growth rate of 10%, which means we have 100% plus 10%, which gives us 110%, which could also be written as 1.1. Now, how many periods of increase do we have? 2 years after purchase. Okay, 2 growth periods. Now we got to solve for A. First thing we can do is divide everything by 200. We get 1.1 squared equals A. Now, how do we get 1.1 squared? You can multiply it out by hand, but there's a trick if you notice. 11 squared is 121. 1.1 squared is 1.21. Another way to look at it, 12 squared is 144. That means 1.2 squared is 1.44. So all those multiplication tables you learned for 11 squared, 12 squared, 13 squared, 14 squared, and on, those can all be applied to help you with decimals where there's a 1 in there. Okay, so A is 1.21. Number 19. Based on the system of equations, yeah, I see 2 equations there. What is the value of 5x plus 5y? Now, when they ask you to solve for x or y individually, there may be something else to do. When they're asking you to solve for an expression like this, the first thing you want to do is check for simple elimination, which means just add the 2 equations or subtract them and see what you get. In this case, we add them, and we get 5x plus 5y. Oh, hooray, we're basically done. Equals 2,500. So that is our answer. Number 20, if u plus t equals 5 and u minus t equals 2, what is the value of u minus t times u squared minus t squared? We have another difference of squares. It's important to notice this because we can factor that out immediately. So we're going to have u minus t. We'll just bring this down. We're going to factor this into u minus t times u plus t. And then we can just substitute all the values. U plus t is 5. U minus t is 2. Still 2 there, so 2 times 2 times 5 is 20.